Henry Thompson was a man who believed he had life under control. With wealth, power, and influence, he considered himself the architect of his own destiny. He saw the world as a grand competition where the strongest and most determined triumphed, and in his view, he had already reached the pinnacle. Success, for Henry, was a reflection of personal merit, and those who failed to achieve it were simply lacking in ambition. He lived within a bubble of privilege, never questioning the advantages that shaped his worldview. But life has a curious way of putting us to the test. At what seemed like an ordinary event, Henry would meet someone who not only challenged his way of thinking, but also dismantled his most deeply held certainties. This person was Laila Johnson, a woman whose strength and authenticity would shake his world and gradually transform it. Henry didn't yet realize that on this day, he wasn't attending just another lecture for his usual audience. He was about to embark on a journey that would force him to confront everything he believed to be true. The transformation began there, in that auditorium filled with young entrepreneurs and a woman who refused to accept the world as he saw it. As Henry Thompson took a deep breath while entering the auditorium, he thought it was just another event for young entrepreneurs, something he did regularly to boost his public image and reinforce his position as an influential businessman. He knew these lectures made a good impression, attracted potential investors, and, of course, presented him as a man committed to the future of young people. In reality, he cared little for the challenges they faced. For him, success was simple. It required only willpower and determination. After all, that was what had gotten him to where he was, or so he thought. The auditorium was full, but something about this event felt different. As he approached the stage, he noticed a woman with a strong posture and an attentive gaze among the organizers. She was young, black, and had an expression that radiated determination. When their eyes met, Henry noticed she didn't look away, which made him uncomfortable, though he masked it well. The lecture started as usual. Henry spoke about the power of the market, the opportunities for those who worked hard enough and didn't let difficulties defeat them. He noticed murmurs in the audience but continued, confident that his words were inspiring. When the Q&A session began, that same woman raised her hand. She introduced herself as Laila Johnson, a lawyer and coordinator of an NGO fighting for minority rights. Her tone was firm but respectful. She directly questioned Henry's views, challenging him on how he perceived the reality of disadvantaged communities. She pointed out that the opportunities he mentioned were not available to everyone, and that success wasn't just a matter of will but also of access and privilege. Henry tried to rebut, but his voice sounded more irritated than he intended. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially in public. Laila's words left a mark, and no matter how much he wanted to ignore them, they continued to echo in his mind. He left the event feeling unsettled, irritated by the audacity of that woman, but deep down, something within him felt confused and restless. He tried to maintain his composure, but Laila's firmness and confidence disarmed him. At that moment, unbeknownst to him, Henry was beginning a journey that would forever change the way he saw the world and himself. After that first encounter, Henry found himself thinking more about Laila than he would have liked. He told himself it was merely irritation. After all, who did she think she was to challenge him like that? He had achieved everything on his own, and no one had the right to suggest that his victories weren't deserved. Yet the unease grew, and he began making excuses to attend events and meetings where he knew Laila would be. They occasionally crossed paths, and each meeting seemed to grow more intense. During one such occasion, at a community event, Laila confronted Henry once again. She questioned the solutions he proposed for reducing inequality, stating that they were superficial and ignored the root causes of social issues. Henry attempted to argue, but he felt disarmed by her conviction. He found himself irritated, yet simultaneously fascinated by the strength and certainty with which Laila expressed herself. The attraction he began to feel was undeniable, but he didn't know how to handle it. To him, liking someone like Laila seemed absurd. She represented everything he despised. But the more he tried to resist, the more he found himself drawn to her strength, to her authenticity. Laila, on her part, noticed Henry's advances but kept her distance, always emphasizing that he needed to acknowledge his biases before wanting any kind of connection. Unbeknownst to him, Henry was starting to desire not just to be near her, but also to understand the world through her eyes. The change Laila had sparked in Henry was still in its early stages, but life had its own plans to accelerate his transformation. In an unexpected twist, Henry's company faced a severe financial crisis. Partnerships were dissolved, investments were lost, and the people he believed would always stand by him simply vanished. For the first time, he experienced the weight of fragility and loneliness. It was in this moment of vulnerability that Laila appeared in a way he never expected. Upon learning about his situation, she offered her help, not with financial resources, but with genuine advice and support. Surprised by her willingness, Henry found himself touched by a humanity he had never experienced before. Laila, whom he had always judged as distant from his reality, extended her hand with selfless kindness, showing him a value he had never appreciated: empathy. This gesture became a turning point in Henry's life. As he felt the sting of abandonment and judgment, he began to question his deepest beliefs and recognize how much of his success had been built on a foundation of privilege. Determined to repay Laila's support, he started to understand that this was an opportunity to rebuild not just his company, but also himself. Determined to change, Henry began his transformation journey, a process that was both challenging and enlightening. He immersed himself in Laila's nonprofit activities, offering not only his time but also his willingness to learn. In the beginning, his steps were hesitant. He felt the weight of judgment from those around him, especially those who were aware of his reputation as a cold, elitist businessman. Laila, always by his side, was candid and challenging. She reminded him that true transformation wasn't a superficial gesture but a profound shift in how he perceived and valued the world. Henry was surprised by the impact of small actions, such as listening to the stories of the people the nonprofit helped, on his perception. For the first time, he was stepping outside his bubble of privilege and witnessing firsthand the struggles faced by marginalized communities. With each new encounter, he found himself confronted with ideas he once considered unquestionable, beginning to understand how his old way of life had been shaped by ignorance and prejudice. As time passed, he became more actively involved in supporting the nonprofit's causes, not as someone offering charity, but as someone eager to drive real change. He invested resources and used his influence to facilitate the organization's work, ensuring that more people had access to opportunities for development and empowerment. For Henry, this was a new way of giving back, not just to Laila, but to the individuals who were helping him see life from a new perspective. Henry's transformation was not only visible to others, it was deeply felt within him. Gradually, he began to realize the impact Laila had on his life, not just as a captivating presence, but as a constant inspiration to be better. He knew that earning her respect was more than a romantic goal. It was proof that he was evolving into a more humane and conscious person. This new phase led him to distance himself from old friends and allies, those who shared the worldview he had once embraced. Henry recognized that this was an inevitable consequence of his transformation. He could no longer support the rhetoric and practices that had previously underpinned his life and career. The journey was tough, and Henry faced moments of doubt and uncertainty. But with every step, he found motivation in Laila and the causes she championed. More than ever, he realized that this was his chance to finally become someone worthy of her respect and, perhaps, the love he now longed to share. Henry understood that his life would never be the same since he began to see the world through Laila's eyes. He decided that not only did he want to change, but he needed to change. Driven by this new perception of himself and the desire to earn Laila's trust, he threw himself wholeheartedly into causes he had once ignored. Participating in the nonprofit's activities was the first step. At first, Henry still felt like an outsider, out of place among people who only knew him as a wealthy, distant businessman. Laila guided him on this path, making it clear that he needed to be there not just to observe, but to learn. With patience, She introduced him to the stories and struggles of the people they helped, showing him the weight of the inequalities they faced every day. Henry began to understand what it meant to be in a position of privilege and how that privilege had shaped his view of success. He realized that much of what he had achieved was built on a network of advantages that many people would never have. The discomfort this caused him motivated him to rethink the purpose of his life and work. Over time, Henry transitioned from volunteer to active advocate for the nonprofit's causes. He used his influence to secure resources and partnerships, ensuring that more young people had access to training and support programs. He learned the importance of listening, rather than just offering quick solutions, and with every new encounter, his commitment to transformation became more tangible. The internal conflicts that had once been uncomfortable now became a source of growth. His relationship with Laila also deepened. She watched Henry's transformation with caution, testing his commitment and intentions. For him, earning her trust was more than proving he was changing. It was a symbol of his evolution, a confirmation that he was on the right path. And alongside her, he discovered a new way to view love, not as a personal conquest, but as a connection based on respect and empathy. Henry still faced judgments and the loss of old friends, but now he understood that change required sacrifices. For the first time, he was at peace with the choice he had made. After months of dedication and growth, Henry and Laila were ready to embrace the feelings they had cultivated for each other. However, the love they felt would still face trials. Henry knew that, despite his transformation, the world around him wouldn't change overnight. When he and Laila decided to publicly acknowledge their relationship, they encountered judgmental looks and criticism from both friends and family. Henry, who once dismissed these reactions as irrelevant, now felt the weight of prejudice. During a family dinner, the resistance was evident. Some relatives made uncomfortable remarks about the relationship and Laila's work at the nonprofit. But unlike in the past, Henry chose to confront the situation head-on. In a moment of courage and honesty, he declared his love and gratitude for Laila, stating that she was the reason for his transformation and that, by her side, he had discovered a true purpose. His speech resonated with some people, but others still rejected him. However, Henry and Laila chose to focus on those who wholeheartedly supported them. They decided to get married in an intimate ceremony, surrounded only by friends and family who shared their vision and believed in their love. The celebration was simple yet emotional, symbolizing the union of two worlds that, together, had become stronger. After the wedding, Henry and Laila dedicated themselves to a life of purpose, using their resources and connections to open doors for young people who, like Laila, faced prejudice and inequality. They established a scholarship program and developed projects to support marginalized communities, combining their talents and experiences to transform the world around them. Their journey was marked by challenges, but also by profound personal transformation. The love between Henry and Laila became a shining example of resilience, and together, they demonstrated that when love is genuine, it can break down the toughest barriers and bring out the best in everyone.